Shalom, and welcome to our show, The Crossover, a show about bridging gaps between Jews and Christians. Today we have a very special guest, Avi Lipkin. He's a conservative/Orthodox Jew. Let's put it to you this way. He definitely observes his Sabbaths and goes to synagogue on Saturday and many other things that are for a Torah-observant Jew. He's an author and he's also a speaker. He is an outstanding advocate for building bridges between Jews and Christians, especially so they can focus on fighting what their true enemy is, the anti-Judeo-Christian spirit and ignorance. He has spoken across America to numerous churches, synagogues, and civic groups, including radio and TV appearances, such as the 700 Club, Zola Levitt, Marlon Maddox, Jewish Voice, and many others. He is the author of 2 books that are of great relevance in these days: Christian Revival for Israel's Survival, and Is Fanatic Islam a Global Threat? He studied for an MA in Israel's Conservative Jewish Seminary and is a former spokesman for the Israel Defense Force and Reserves and is former senior editor and translator for the Israeli government press office under Prime Minister Shamir. Here is Mitch and Avi Lipkin.
Avi, welcome to The Crossover. We're glad you made the time to visit us today and share a little bit of your knowledge with us.
Thank you.
Avi, I want to just start off. The purpose of our show, The Crossover, is to bridge a gap between Jews and Christians. And how are you doing that in your life with your works?
Well, firstly, as an American-born Jew, I grew up in a family which my parents were from Argentina. They lived in a Catholic country, Argentina. They had never experienced anti-Semitism in their life in Argentina. When they came to America, they decided to send me to Hebrew school, and there, as a person who was born in 1949, I learned a lot about the Holocaust and what the Germans had done to the Jews and what the Russians had done to the Jews under Stalinism and under the Tsar, and what the Catholics had done to the Jews in the Inquisition and in the Crusades, the persecutions of 1900 years. And when I moved to Israel at age 19, I was a very, very angry person against all Christians, and it wasn't until I was 37 years old that I began to understand that there are good Christians, that there are Christians who love the Jews and love Israel. And as time went on, when I came to the States in 41 as an Israeli speaker, and I went to for the first time in my life to a Christian church, and I saw the love that the Christians have for Israel, that the true Christian indeed must love Israel. That a person who does not love Israel and the Jews is not a Christian, basically, because Jesus was a Jew.
That's well said.
And so I came to a very, very simple conclusion that the Jews and the Christians need to find a way to work together, because now, as an Israeli, I understood that without the Christians, Israel cannot survive.
Avi, you're hitting on a lot of notes here, which we're going to eventually cover with you. Tell us, though, when I was gleaning through your book here, it seems like when you were before the Dallas Council of World Affairs, that was a moment in your life that was probably quite significant and turned you around and maybe changed your heart towards the Christians. And we share that with our viewers.
Well, indeed, in April of 1991, right after Desert Storm, I was invited by the Dallas Council on World Affairs to speak as an Israeli representative. And I thought that I would be received as a hero, because the United States and Israel I always thought were allies, and I thought Israel was a very, very silent but very loyal partner during Desert Storm. And I expected to be given a hero's welcome in Dallas. And instead, I was given a very big dressing down, as if I were the Prime Minister, Yitzhak Shamir. And I was told that if Israel, did not make peace with the Palestinians on the Palestinians' terms, that Israel basically would be destroyed, and that another 5 million Jews would be killed, just like 6 million were killed in World War II, that the Jews will be abandoned. America is not the ally. And that night at that dinner where I spoke, I had invited 4 Christians, born-again Christians, my kind of Christians, and one of them was Eric Gustafson, rest in peace, who was a very dear Christian, who was a big supporter of Marlon Maddox and KVTT Christian Radio in Dallas. And I invited him as my guest that night because he had invited me to a fundraiser for Marlon Maddox in November of 1990. And what shook me so much and changed my whole viewpoint towards Christians was when he got up and he said that those people who say that oil is what made America great, that money is what made America great, these are not Christians. These people should be ashamed of themselves. And that what made America great is not the barrel of oil, which sacrificed 6 million Jews in World War II. What made America great was Jesus Christ. And you have to understand, as a Jew, it's very hard to hear the name Jesus Christ, because Jewish people are very, very much, how should I say, under 1900 years of persecution from the Catholic Church and from the East Orthodox churches, and Jesus Christ is not a popular name in the Jewish world. But when I heard this from Eric Gustafsson, all of a sudden it changed. And I came to the understanding, indeed, that the true Christian, the true American Christian, loves Israel, loves the Bible, loves God, loves Jesus Christ, and it's a package deal. And whenever a Christian says that he loves Jesus Christ and loves Israel, you know this is a real Christian. But a person who says he loves Jesus Christ but he hates the Jews or hates Israel, then according to my kind of Christian's interpretation, that's not a Christian.
They're not Christian. They're not going by the book.
Yeah, and that indeed America is ruled by one or another type of person, the Christian who's really a Christian or the Christian who's not a Christian.
So when you're going around now speaking to many brethren that are Jewish that have been through family lineages of persecution that still are standoffish to the Christian, and you're
Correct.
trying to break down those barriers
Correct.
from your own experiences and what you've seen.
Very, very correct. I spend 6 days a week in churches and Messianic groups, and on the Sabbaths I'm in the Orthodox and Conservative, sometimes even Reform, believe it or not, but usually Orthodox communities are the ones that host me the most.
You on one of your books here, Christian Revival for Israel Survival, you have a statement on the back cover that really made me shudder when I read it. And it said here, the reason for me to write this book is that it has become clear to me that Christians worldwide will be also sacrificed if necessary for a barrel of oil. The only answer, therefore, for Israel, America, and for the world is a Christian revival for Israel's survival. Well, that sacrifice for a barrel of oil, I mean, that's got to get your hair up. What's your point on that?
Well, as I was just saying, 6 million Jews in World War II were sacrificed for Arab oil. The Arabs had the oil, and they said to the British and to the Americans, if you let the Jews go to Palestine, we go over to Hitler. If you let the Jews go to Britain or America, we go over to Hitler. If you let the Jews go to Cuba, Mexico, or the Dominican Republic, if you let the Jews so much as leave Nazi-occupied Europe, we go over to Hitler. So 6 million Jews, indeed, were sacrificed. We shouldn't be surprised by what we see today, because today 2 million blacks have been slaughtered in the Sudan. And the plan is to genocidally kill 6 to 8 million more black people in the Sudan. Why? Because they live on top of the last, as of yet, unexploited oil reserves in the world. Sudan potentially is a member of the oil cartel, of the OPEC oil cartel.
Okay.
And unfortunately, a lot of people in the United States under different administrations over the last 15 years have remained silent as 2 million blacks were killed. And they are killing the blacks with biological and chemical weapons, just like Jews were killed with poison gas. They are killing hundreds of thousands of Christians in Indonesia. Indonesia is part of the barrel of oil cartel. So you cannot go against Islam. And even the war in Serbia, the war over Kosovo and Bosnia, the Serbs, who are always the allies of America in World War I, World War II, were sacrificed for a barrel of oil. So these Christians were also sacrificed.
The Christians are not immune from what you're stating here, that we're trying
Yes,
to eradicate.
and indeed, you know, I don't have to tell you about the gospel, but Jesus teaches, and I think we should, as Jews, also follow many things that Jesus teaches, because Jesus was a rabbi. He was teaching Judaism, and a lot of things he says are confirmed in Jewish philosophy, known as Pirkei Avot. Hopefully my third book will be on that, paralleling the New Testament, Pirkei Avot, and Greek philosophy. But Jesus said, you either serve the Lord or you serve Mammon. Mammon, in Hebrew, mammon, means money. And you cannot serve both masters. Either you serve God or you serve corruption. And the people who serve the oil companies are serving mammon, they're serving corruption. And like I said, Jews and Christians are going to be sacrificed for a barrel of oil.
And in one of our other shows with you, we're going to go into that into more detail here, Avi. Let me ask you this, a little bit of a change here. You moved to Israel, you were an American living here, and you gave up the comforts, or whatever you want to call it, of living here to do what's called Aliyah.
Yeah.
If you want to explain that to our viewers, and also and the purpose behind your decision to move your family.
Well, firstly, I moved as a bachelor. I was 19 years old.
Okay.
I was a junior in college, and I went for the junior year abroad program, got there, canceled it, and became an Israeli student, knowing I'd never come back. Finished my BA at Hebrew University, went into the Army, went into business, and in midlife crisis went for an MA at the Jewish Theological Seminary in Jerusalem, trying to become a conservative rabbi. Many people say to me, God had other plans. Instead of being a 100-family pulpit rabbi, I became an unauthorized rabbi to 20, 30 million Christians. And that's what happens as I travel around the United States of America. But indeed, I moved to Israel because I believed then and I believe today that it is scriptural, it is prophetic, that the Jews need to go home to Israel. And whether we like it or not, we will be going back to Israel very soon, I think.
Well, we're going to take a break here, and we want you all to take a little snip of some shots that we have of some beautiful Israeli dancing by some Americans. Enjoy. You enjoyed all that great dancing there. And our guest here is Avi Lipkin, and we're going to continue on with the spotlight on Avi. Avi, I want to ask you this question. I know you were a former senior editor for the Israeli government press, if I've got all that right. And what can Israel do to better position herself right now in the press? It seems like from where we are over here in America, the PA, the Palestinian Authority, seems to have figured that one out. And when you have many countries siding with Arafat and the terrorist that he is, there's something wrong. And how can Israel better position themselves in this country or around the world to get more national support, global support?
Well, firstly, we are not playing on a level field, level playing field. If you remember that there was a Saudi prince who came to New York and gave Mayor Giuliani a $10 million check, which he promptly returned to this Saudi prince when he criticized Israel. This Saudi prince owns $968 million in stock of AOL, Time Warner, and Citibank. Now, when you consider that a lot of these Islamic leaders are fabulously rich, and I mean, there's no way that you and I together could count just the interest accruing every second of the money that they have. Israel does not have those funds. Israel cannot in any way compete in a PR campaign with what the Islamic world has. I would say it maybe in a slightly different way. The Israeli Information Service is aimed at providing a service to the press in Israel. I worked for 2 years in Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir's government press office, and we worked very hard to put out a really, really meaty daily press survey. There's a lot of meat in it. Unfortunately, the media people are paid for their services by their bosses, who are paid for their services by the Islamic petrodollar. So basically, all the work, I think, was for naught, because you're not really giving the information to your allies, you're giving it to your enemies, which means you're wasting your time. My personal hope in life will be to stop traveling, go back to Israel, and put up a daily press survey, like I did in the Prime Minister's office 10 years ago with my sons, and that any pastor from the Assemblies of God, any pastor from the Calvary chapels, any pastor from the Baptist churches, any pastor from the Lutherans, Methodists, Episcopals, Presbyterians, the Roman Catholics, any leader in those churches can tap onto the website every day at 4 or 5 in the afternoon and get a daily press survey from the Israeli press and know really what's going on. And if we can get to the pastors and priests, then we can get to the American public through the churches.
That's excellent, but we still have to get to the secular world that is not going to be as tuned in to what's happening to Mideast affairs. Let me ask you something on this book. This is another of Avi's books, is Fanatic Islam, a Global Threat. And Avi, you started writing this, if I was reading this correctly, in '94 you started on putting this together.
Correct.
In '97 it came out, and it's had 5 editions now.
Yeah.
Now, 7 years ago, you foresaw maybe what many of us in America didn't see. We were kind of blinded about fanatic Islam, we're talking here, the evil of the system that's not working, and not the people. And President Bush currently has approximately 40 countries that he has allied with to fight terrorism, to fight radical Islam, to fight evil. But the one country he doesn't have, or has not seemed to ask, and we're not hearing it on our side, is Israel, who probably has the most experience of fighting terrorism than any other country in the world. Why? Is it just too much of a powder keg over there to get her involved in that, or is there more behind the scenes?
Well, I think the key word here is hatred. Islam as a system chooses to look at the Jew as the most implacable enemy of Islam. That's what it says in the Quran. There is a hatred that I would say rivals the Nazi hatred for the Jewish people. Israel, of course, is cooperating with the United States law enforcement and the United States intelligence. It always has. Israel did reveal to the United States before the first attack on the World Trade Center in February of '93 that there was an attack planned. Israel did reveal to the United States before the Oklahoma City bombing, which in my book on page 265 I explain was a Saddam Hussein Islamic State terrorism attack. And Israel, of course, did reveal before the September 11th attacks that something was about to happen. And of course, there were a lot of problems in American law enforcement over the last decade because of certain laws that were passed which did not allow for U.S. intelligence gathering to work with criminals. But you know, most of the best intelligence you get is from the criminals who are involved with it.
Right.
So therefore, the United States paid very dearly on September the 11th. So Israel, I think, behind the scenes, is absolutely the most trusted ally America has. I think Israel is the only real friend that the Americans have. When your ship, the USS Cole, was attacked in the port of Aden in Yemen, the Egyptian military and government refused or could not ensure the safety of that ship going through the Suez Canal. So the ship had to go around Africa. I think there's only one port of call for the U.S. Sixth Fleet where the American troops are really loved and welcomed, and that's in Israel. Your American troops, men and women, are not welcome and are not loved in the Islamic countries.
Well, we sure hope our country stays lined up with Israel, and we also hope from a biblical standpoint that are going to align with her with, I know the land is an issue that we can touch on here too. Do you think if this country started drilling for oil in Alaska, and if they say that we have enough oil there to make us self-sufficient, and we didn't have to rely on the Mideast, you think we'd be handling terrorism differently, or the land issue in Israel, etc., differently than what we see now with all the politics?
Well, firstly, I want to differentiate between the relationship with Israel and the relationship between the United States and the terrorist groups that are coming against the United States. Because many people try to put it together and say that, well, America is being hurt because it supports Israel. That's not true at all. So firstly, I wanted to say that the United States is facing a war of religion. It's not a question of oil. It's not a question of water supplies. It's not a question of territories. And it's not a question of Jerusalem. It's a question of religion. It is a war between the God of the Jews and the Christians, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and another God known as Allah, who is based on the pagan moon god, war god, and sword god of ancient Mecca and Medina. And the genealogy that is holy to the Jews and Christians is that of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and yet Islam says, no, it's Ishmael. And God says 5 times in Genesis, it is through Isaac my seed will be called, not through Ishmael. So there's a confusion here. And Islam does say that America is the primary and ultimate target of Islam, because without the fall of America, the rest of the Christian countries will not fall to Islam. America must be destroyed according to the revolutionary approach. We spoke about revolutionary and evolutionary.
Off the air we did,
Off the air, yes.
Maybe you want to explain that.
If we have time. I'm just saying simply that the Muslims in America are divided into 3 groups. The first group, like the Jews and the Christians, I say 80% of the Muslims don't have a clue about terrorism. They renounce and denounce terrorism, and they're very sincere, because these people are good people, and they came, many of them, fleeing from the persecution and tyranny of Islam in their original home countries. And they came here just to live and be like anybody else, like the Jews and the Christians. So these are good people. Then there are 2 other groups. You have the evolutionaries and the revolutionaries, which I'd say are between 10 and 20%. The evolutionaries make up the vast majority of that 20%. They're good people, they're family people, you know, they're loving people, but they want to take over America for Allah. They want to make America an Islamic country and replace the Judeo-Christian ethic with that of Islam. They want to replace God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob with the God of Ishmael, Allah. And they want ultimately that Islam be the only religion on the face of the earth, and so they want to take out America spiritually.
This is the evolutionary.
The evolutionary. And they don't use violence. They use the petrodollar,
okay. It's important
they
to
use
hear that.
petroleum, and they use their numbers, because Islam now has 15 million Muslims in the last 15 years. Where did they come from? The revolutionaries are a very, very small percentage, between 1 and less than 1%. But if you have 15 million Muslims on American soil, and let's say 1% are terrorists, that's 150,000. If 1/10% are terrorists, that's 15,000. If 100% are terrorists, that's 1,500. You know, I have a friend who's a Navy SEAL, and he said to me, give me 50 SEALs, we shut down the United States. And on September 11th, 19 Islamic SEALs shut down the United States. So I say that, of course, the vast majority of Muslims are peace-loving people. They're good people. I love the Muslims. You know, if I overcame my hatred of the Germans as a result of the Holocaust, I overcame my hatred of the Russians. How can I hate the Arabs? How can I hate the Iranians? How can I hate the Muslims? I love them. They're good people. But I have pity for them, and I hurt for them, because, especially the women and the children who have to see their mothers being beaten by their fathers. And this is, of course, from chapter 4, verse 34 of the Quran. If your woman is disobedient, admonish them, send them to beds apart, and beat them, because they have 4 wives. But answering your question about Alaska oil, I have no doubt that George W. Bush, immediately after his inauguration over a year ago, one of the first things he did was to go to Vicente Fox of Mexico and nail down, you know, it wasn't published at that time, but Vicente Fox came out a few months later and said, we will fill any need for oil that America has. Then he went to England and he met with Tony Blair. And the press was saying, well, why are you meeting with Tony Blair? Tony Blair is a Clintonite. You, George W., you have nothing to do with somebody like this normally. He said, it's not me and it's not Tony Blair. It's America and England that have always shared the alliance for saving the world. And America saved the world with Britain in World War I, and America saved the world with Britain in World War II, and America saved the world with Britain in the Communist Cold War. And I believe that this war with terrorism is a form of a third world war. It is a world war.
It's a war.
Yeah.
Avi, and our last question to you is, what would you want to share with our viewers here? And we're going to come back and cover a lot more of that radical Islam in another segment. But here you've gone from America to Israel. You're coming back to America to give us a message, Jew and Christian alike. And what is it that you can succinctly
Two quotes from the Bible. Hosea 4, verse 6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Jews and Christians are my people. The second one is from Ezekiel 33, verse 6. If the watchman on the tower sees the sword coming, and indeed the sword does come, and he did not blow the shofar, he did not sound the alarm, and those people behind the walls die, they die in their iniquity, but their blood will be required at the hands of the watchman who did not sound the alarm. And so my message is not so much to scare you, but to prepare you. The sword is coming. The sword is here already. And again, we have to differentiate between, like I said before, 80% of the Muslims who have nothing to do with this at all, and maybe another 10 or 15% who want to conquer America for the sake of Islam, but not through violent means. And then a very small fraction which are totally destructive. But these totally destructive people with atomic, biological, and chemical weapons can destroy the world.
Well, you think they have nuclear weapons, by the way, Avi?
I have no doubt that they have the backpacks that everybody was alluding to. There's a movie called The Peacemaker people need to watch. These weapons today cannot really be used as explosive weapons, but they can be used as dirty bombs. In other words, you can detonate them and spread radioactivity. Yes.
Avi, we're out of time, but we want to thank you again for giving us some of your time here and sharing with our viewers, and we can spotlight you today.
Anytime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed that wonderful talk with Avi Lipkin. We'll be having him for future shows, and for those of you who are interested in ordering his books, you can contact him on his website or the phone number that's on the screen. For books, it's 1-888-639-8530, and to schedule him to speak at your church, your civil organization, or your synagogue, you could call 1-800-728-1779. We'll be having him speak about his fanatic Islam, a global threat, and Christian revival for Israel's survival sin. Shalom.